Hello, my name is Shaun Richman. I'm the program director of the Harry Van Arsdale Jr. School of Labor Studies at the State University of New York. Just cause is an employment standard, an employment right across the industrialized world. It's not just France. But the idea that they can't fire you for no reason or bad reason is found throughout Africa, throughout Asia. It's enormously common. The at-will standard, the at-will law that the industry was referring to, is not a law that anyone ever voted on. It was an invention of 19th century judges. And arguably, and I do make this argument, the Constitution was amended twice to give people more protections throughout society, but judges have disagreed. Like much of our system of worker representation, the general sort of acceptance of at will is an accident. When unions represented 1 in 3 workers, non-union firms tried to match union standards in pay and benefit, but also they behaved with a little bit of decency around terminations. 40 plus years into a sustained corporate assault on unions, with union density hovering at around 10%, employers are really acting with impunity now, and they manage through a routine of workplace authoritarianism. I've argued for a federal just cause law. I think it needs to be an amendment to the Fair Labor Standards Act. According to a survey by Data for Progress and YouGov, 56% of voters agree. Only 30% of voters oppose the idea of a federal right to your job. The rest, I suspect, think that it already is the law because it seems reasonable enough that it should be the law. But it's clear the bosses are relying on the anti-majoritarian parts of our federal government, the Senate, the Electoral College, to thwart this popular agenda. It is a saving grace for our democracy that local governments like New York City are willing to consider the protections that workers need and Congress will not consider. We have plenty of workplace protection laws, as the industry representatives were saying. You're not supposed to be fired for your race, your gender, your age, or sexual orientation until the Supreme Court comes after that one. The problem is, A, that there's special protections, but B, the law puts the onus on the employee to make a case that the termination was fair. The employer just gets to make the termination. And of course, it's worse when there's no cause at all, which I understand in this industry. You're generally not fired. You just don't see yourself on the schedule next week. You don't see yourself on the schedule the week after that. And by then, you've probably had to go get another job because who can live without a paycheck for 2 weeks? What just cause requires of employers is not onerous. And I'll say that in a previous life, I was an organizing director for the American Federation of Teachers. I had a staff of 50 people around the country, everybody covered by a collective bargaining agreement. Very complex work requiring a tremendous amount of discretion and judgment by the employees, and I was able to manage. It requires clear communication, some counseling, some training, and some warnings. Basic human decency. And I would say, so Van Arsdale is just a labor studies school. Sometimes labor studies is sort of put in the management school. Fortunately, for my temperament, we're not in that case. But I do have a lot of respect for management as a science, far more than most corporations do. Human resources and management, they're academic disciplines, they're professions, it's a field of study. And it needs to be taken seriously. So even though we're focused on making frontline fast food jobs livable here, one happy side effect of this law, I think, would be to raise the standards for supervisors. A manager of a McDonald's store is really a branch manager of a global brand representing a Fortune 500 company. That should be a middle-class profession, which entails not just a reasonable salary, but also minimum standards of education and support for training. So whatever gloss the industry puts on it, all I hear is, please don't make us invest in our people. And I say to you, please make them invest in their people. If I may, there was a question that was asked a couple panels ago that I'd like to respond to in terms of, are there other industry models of just cause and arbitration? And I would say there are. We don't have to travel very far geographically. We might have to go a little bit back in time, but it's actually the restaurant industry itself, which was once upon a time fully unionized. Not just the high-class restaurants, not just the restaurants in hotels, but also the fast food of its day, the cafeterias and automats. It all got organized in a 2-year period, 1937 to 1938, after the industry had spent 20 years fighting these union efforts. A tremendous number of strikes happened. And what happened is the industry made peace with the fact that there was going to be a union. The nation's laws had changed, the state's laws had changed. You had a governor that was going to weigh in on the workers' behalf. You had a mayor that was going to weigh in on the workers' behalf. And the industry decided, that if it's going to happen, they want it to happen in a way that improved their business. And they all developed an impartial chairman model of employment relations. Which is where there is an arbitrator that both parties agree. There's a term of office for that person. And it develops almost a sort of a voluntary court of not quite law, but a voluntary court where there's a shared understanding of what the standards are for certain jobs, what the training standards are, what the employment standards are, what the sort of punishment standards should be. And before it even went to arbitration, there was always a step of mediation, of sort of, let's see your case, let's see our case, how hard do you want to fight this, how hard do we want to fight this? This model still exists in the hotel industry, and it's very successful. I used to work for the Hotel Trades Council, and I think that at least 90% of grievances actually wind up getting settled out. It does require an employer making peace with the fact that there's going to be a union, and from the industry panel, it didn't sound like they're there yet.